Scott's back on, probably the fan favorite of the show. Got him on. We're going to talk SUPERFLEX strategy, something very important. Pretty much every new league, if you start a new league, nobody's starting a one quarterback league. One quarterback leagues are horrible compared to SUPERFLEX leagues. Nobody would ever sign up for a new one quarterback league. Aren't the majority of your leagues SUPERFLEX, Scott? Because I don't play in any single quarterback leagues.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, I think last offseason you said you had like one or two that were one QB, but you're trying to change it, right?
Yep, got rid of them all, and now I just have that one.
Yeah. Well, you want to jump into some SUPERFLEX strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to start by just looking at, where I know we did the episode last week when you talked about some quarterbacks that kind of went up and down in value. But I think right now you just have to look at where the quarterback landscape is today versus where it was a year from now, or where it was a year ago today. To me, the tier at the top has really separated itself from everybody else. So you're talking about Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Watson and Kyler Murray, and then down to like Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. Like, to me, there's a cutoff there after those six. So from a SUPERFLEX strategy standpoint, the first thing would be I'm trying to get as many of those guys as I can. If I can build my SUPERFLEX quarterbacks around two of those six, that's ideal. And
yeah.
Unfortunately, if you don't have them, the price to acquire them, like Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I've seen that they're the top two picks in startup drafts. So maybe you're not going to get them on the same team unless you're basically trading every other asset to get both of them. So I wouldn't recommend that. But, ideally, if you have both of them, you're set. You're not making any moves. Like, to me, if you have one of those guys and then you could potentially get another one, to pivot upwards to maybe acquire like Dak Prescott or Kyler Murray, I would do that. But generally, I'm not paying for Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes necessarily. But if I can acquire one of those guys, the first step I'm trying to do it with is to pivot off of, one of the lesser quarterbacks to see what it would take to move up to one of those guys. So that's the first thing. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I mean, that's where my tier is, those six, and then it starts to drop off, and then I have a second tier, like of 3 or 4 guys that I'm comfortable with. But obviously, if I can move up into that top 6, that's kind of what I'm doing. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. The top 6 are by far and away. I think it's kind of a consensus at this point. I don't really hear many people arguing for anyone else inside that tier, but I think it's a great idea. Like, maybe throw like a Jared Goff in like the 2021 to try to get like Russell Wilson, because I could see someone wanting to do that. You know what I mean? That's not that. I mean, I could see that offer even the other way getting rejected. You know what I mean? If I have Russell Wilson and sending it for Jared Goff in the 2021, I think that's an offer that. Tell me if I'm off here, but I feel like that's a fair thing that you could do.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually got an offer this morning. This is a 14-team SUPERFLEX with 1 round of Devy. So it's literally identical to our Fleet 1 league, except for it's 14 teams, but not 16 teams. But the same principle. I mean, there's 1 round of Devy that were drafted. So the draft picks are slightly lesser valued than they would be when all the rookies are available, but only 1 round. So it's not, you got to consider there's a couple guys in there that aren't going to be first rounders. And there was a couple guys that were drafted that are not coming out in this class. So you got to figure of the 14 Devy that are off the board, there's maybe, 6 to 8 of them that are probably going to be like top 20 picks or top 20 rookie picks. And I got offered Russell Wilson, and it's a start 12 league. So it's actually very similar depth to the Fleet League. I mean, you're starting, I believe you can start 7 flexes in this league.
Okay. And it's a 14-team league. So that even adds more to it.
Yeah, 14-team SUPERFLEX, and it's a start 12. So your depth matters a little bit more. And I got offered Russell Wilson, and I would give up my first and my second rounder, which is the one I finished second in the league. So I was the 113 and the 213. And if you adjust those by the way I did it was I adjusted those by maybe 4 to 7 picks or so, just down from the depleted Devy players that are already taken. So it's basically like Russell Wilson for Matthew Stafford and a early to mid second and an early to mid third. And I'm struggling with it because that's typically the kind of deal I'm looking to make the other way, especially in these really deep leagues. Give me the extra, early second and early third, and I'll take my chances with, the quarterback that I get that's supposedly lesser. But now we're having this discussion and I'm thinking, you know what, that, the value may be on the Russell Wilson side, especially with, Stafford had another injury, another back injury this year, finished the year on IR, this stuff before the season with his wife, being sick. So he kind of smells like one of those guys that I think he's a good value, but you never really know how long he's going to last in terms of a fantasy producer, where I see Russell Wilson doing it for at least, 3 or 4 more years at a pretty high level.
Yeah, at least. It was Wilson 30, 31?
Yeah, just turned 31. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think that giving up a early second and an early third on top of Stafford for Wilson is worth, locking in that secure quarterback production? Because that's a league where I only have those picks. So basically, I'd still have my, third, fourth, and fifth, but those would be my top 2 picks. So,
I mean, I definitely would do it. And like I really played I feel like my best thing as a dynasty player is playing towards league settings. So it's definitely different because of how like deep that league is. But at the same time, I just think the gap between Wilson and Stafford is really, really large with just the insecurity of I think Stafford's I think his ceiling is lower than Wilson's floor, and at the same time, I think that his job security questions, just in the next couple of years, could really outweigh the second and third.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the logic behind it. I think that brings into another part of discussion with Superflex is after these top 6, you do have, I have Carson Wentz, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones kind of in the second tier there, to where, I'm kind of torn on Baker as to whether he really deserves to be in that tier. But I think Carson Wentz is someone that really showed out the end of the 2019 season with pretty bad weapons. You got to figure they're in a window now to win with him, that they have to get him some better weapons. So I can see him holding his value. Josh Allen, I mean, as long as he's a starter, he's going to produce fantasy points. So I think he's perpetually going to be a little bit undervalued, but right now I think he's valued right around where he produces. And then, Daniel Jones, I think he has potential to be another Josh Allen, to where he's a sneaky quarterback one, especially with what looks to be a team that's not going to be great over the next year or two. I think he's also, fairly sneaky to jump into that top 12. I mean, right now he's quarterback 11 on DLF. So I think he's in that second tier for me. But, you could make an argument that, depending on how you see these guys, all the way down to, we mentioned Stafford, but Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, Matt Ryan, even Ryan Tannehill now, Aaron Rodgers. You could put all those guys kind of in the same tier, to where it's really just preference based. You might love one of them and I might love the other one, and there's really not any value for either of us to get in a trade because we don't see the difference between them. So I think that's how I navigate. That's how I'm looking at Superflex now in terms of those second and third tier quarterbacks. It's really I just need enough to get by, and I want the guys that I know, maybe are locked into jobs for 2 or 3 years. But other than that, I'm not rushing out to overpay for any of those guys.
Well, real quick before we end the video, do you want to touch on how how your rookie draft strategy changes with Superflex, where you're looking to take these quarterbacks? Because I feel that every rookie draft, quarterbacks go undervalued. I think that's kind of the cheapest place you can get them is in the rookie draft.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because this year we're going to probably see, outside of Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa, which are probably both going to be top 3 or 4 picks in every Superflex league, especially if Tua does end up going in the top 3 or top 5 in the NFL draft. I think that he's going to be right up there with Burrow in terms of really high draft capital in rookie drafts. But after that, we could see Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts. We could see 5 more quarterbacks come off the board in the top 50 of the NFL draft, which means essentially you're looking at 5 more potential Josh Allens, Daniel Jones, Drew Locks. I mean, you're looking at 5 guys in this year's class that could kind of be in that same tier that we saw last year. And Josh Allen, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, those guys were going early, mid-second round of Superflex drafts. So I think this year you're going to have more potential darts that you can take, in that late first, early to mid-second round range of Superflex draft. And you're right. If you hit on, right now, if you drafted Daniel Jones or Drew Lock in the second, you've made a profit already after 1 year. You can sell those guys for at least what you paid, if not more. And even if you sell them for the same draft pick, let's just say the 203 this year is stronger than the 203 last year. So you did make a profit on those guys. So,
and then you also got that production.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And if you like the guy, you don't necessarily have to sell, but essentially it's an easy and a quick way to hit on the draft pick, because right away whether that guy's going to probably hold his value. He could have a season where he doesn't play at all. And if Daniel Jones would have only played 2 games, he probably wouldn't have lost a whole lot of value, because people would say, well, he didn't get his opportunity yet.
Yeah.
So, they don't lose his value as quickly as like a receiver or a running back that never sees the field. Someone like Damian Harris or Darrell Henderson, like those guys plummeted in value because they really didn't get on the field. And the window for those guys to succeed is it's a lot shorter. So if you waste your rookie year without getting anything from them, owners seem to be, down on those guys faster. So yeah, I think you're going to see some interesting drafts this year, especially if we see all those quarterbacks with draft capital. It's going to be really good value for teams that don't need quarterbacks this year, but there's also going to be some shots that you can take to definitely get some potential starters.
Yeah, I mean, if we just look at like recent history, how many rookie quarterbacks have lost value from their where they were picked in the rookie draft, like Dwayne Haskins and Josh Rosen? Are those like am I missing anyone?
Well, and those guys really didn't even lose a whole lot of value either. I mean, even if you have a season like Dwayne Haskins where you only play, or you only get to start 6 games or 8 games or whatever he started, you still. People don't give up on the quarterbacks with draft capital as quickly. So I think that's going to be the key thing is, where do they get drafted? And if they're drafted in the top, 50, where, the good part about being picked in the early second round is probably they're going to teams where they could potentially start earlier because it's likely a bad team. So that I think that's this is going to be a very intriguing draft. But what I'm doing is basically going to follow NFL draft capital and, see where these guys land. This is not a class where you're going to be reaching on, after those 7, it's a big drop off. So I don't think you're going to see really any guys like Will Grier or Jarrett Stidham that are or Ryan Finley, like 3rd or 4th round picks. I think it's going to be like top 50, top 60. And then it's going to be, I don't really want anybody else from this class.